So today I'm going to teach you how to create a Twitter-like following system using Firebase and Swift. Firebase basically uses a JSON database, so it's not as easy as it would be using an SQL database. So what we have to do is we have to fan out the data and make sure that we can retrieve the data the way we want to display it. So for this project, we're going to be using Swift 3 and Xcode 8. The starter project is going to be available in the link in the description. So what we'll have in the end is basically a login system available using email and password, which will bring us to this Twitter application. Here, if you click on this button over here, you'll be able to see the users available. Once you click on the user, it'll bring you to a page where you can just follow or unfollow a user. So as you can see, I'm already following this user. I'll just unfollow the user and our database gets updated. And if I follow the user again, a followers tab is created, a following tab is created, and a count of the followers is updated in the user profiles. Also, if you go back here to the user's profile, we can click on this following count and it will show us all the users that we're currently following. And also if we click on the followers tab, we'll be able to see all our followers. For people who have been following my tutorials, we know that we've created this application from scratch. So you guys can go and find these tutorials under the Twitter clone playlist available on my channel. So let's begin. The first thing we're going to have to do is we've currently embedded this find user table view inside a navigation controller. We're going to get rid of this and we're going to embed the home view controller directly into a navigation controller. So now we have the navigation controller at the root, which is how it's meant to be. And then we'll connect this controller, which is the home controller, directly to the find user controller. So let's do that. And we'll click present modelly. And let's rename this segue. Let's call it find user segue. Come to the home view controller and we'll override the prepare for segue method here. We'll say override prepare for segue. Inside here, what we'll say is if segue.identifier is equal to find user segue. So we'll say let show follow users table view controller equal to segue.destination as follow users table view controller. So we're basically creating a reference to this table view controller. Then we'll say show follow users table view controller dot logged in user. We'll create a variable called logged in user and we'll pass in the currently logged in user as FIR user. So we created a reference to that table view controller and passed in the data. It's giving us an error because this variable does not exist. If we come here, self.loggedin user is FIR.current user. So now let's go into the follow users table view controller. Here in the follow users controller, we'll create that variable of type FIR user and we'll also import Firebase here. Now that error would have gone. Now let's just create a view controller that shows the profile of the user. So come here, control drag a view controller, place it here and connect it to the prototype cell and we'll say show. Also we'll change this segue from present modelly to show since it's under a navigation controller, so that way it will come up nicely. Here we'll just put in a label. Call that label show user. Let's vertically and horizontally center this. And also let's put in a button below this. And let's just call this follow. Just set up the constraints for this. And let's just create a class for this view controller. Let's say file new file Cocoa Touch class and let's call this user profile view controller. Come to the main storyboard And let's set the class for this. Here let's control drag from the show user label and call this name, where we'll display the name of the user, and let's just drag from the follow button and call it follow button. Again, we'll rename this segue over here and let's call that show user. Coming to the find user, which is the follow user's table view controller, we'll override the prepare for segue. We'll say override prepare for segue. I'm just going to fast forward this code because it's the same like the previous code we just wrote. Again, we've set up the variable for this. So come back to the user profile view controller and create that variable here called logged in user. And just import Firebase here. Also, we'll create another variable here called other user, which is the user's profile that we're viewing. I will say other user is of type NS dictionary. Coming back to the find user, here what we'll do is, this should be user. Also, since we've already declared logged in user as type FIR user, we don't need to re-downcast this over here. Now we need to just pass the other user along with the segue. So we'll say if let index path, since we're getting it from a table view, we'll say table view dot index path for selected row. And we'll just take the user out of that. We'll say let user equal to users array. It's the array which stores all the users. Index path dot row. And we already have the controller, so we'll say show user profile controller dot other user is equal to user. Now let's go to the user's profile controller and write the code required to start following or unfollowing a user. So coming here, let's also create a variable called database reference. We'll call it database ref and it'll be of type FIR database reference. And we'll create a variable called logged in user data, which will be of type NS dictionary. Basically, the logged in user just gives us the details available in the authentication system, which is the name, the email address, and the UID. But we also want the handle of the user and the email address and the profile picture stored in our own database. Which, if you have a quick look at our database, you can see over here. This is what we get for the logged in user data. So first, in the view did load, let's say self.databaseref is equal to FIR database.database.reference. So let's get the user's data. Let's say databaseref.child. Go under the user profiles node. Under that, go inside the self.logged-in user. .uid .observe event type .value with snapshot, and with cancel we'll just say error print error.localized description. Here we'll say self.logged-in user data is equal to snapshot.value as NS dictionary, and then let's say self.logged-in user data dot set value. We'll say self.logged-in user dot UID. For key will be UID. So basically we have the UID in the self.logged-in user .uid, but we want to also add it to this logged in user data because this is written from our database and doesn't contain the UID already. Next, the same thing we'll do is for the other user. We'll say database ref .child user profiles .child self.other user UID as string .observe dot value snapshot error and print error dot localized description. And here we do the same thing. We'll say let uid equal to self dot other user uid as string. Just to make it easy, we'll already store it, and then we'll say self dot other user is equal to snapshot dot value as ns dictionary, and then self dot other user dot set value. We'll say uid, and for key will be uid. So for both the user, the logged in user and the other user, we've got the uid and the data stored. Now we'll check if the user is already following the other user or not. So we'll say database ref dot child. We'll assume that there's a following tab that we'll create to check. Under that, we'll check if the logged in users uid is existing or not. So we'll say logged in user dot uid dot child, and inside that we'll say self dot other user get the uid as string. We'll observe, we'll say dot value with snapshot and error, as always print error dot localized description. Here we'll check that if the snapshot exists, that is, if this particular node exists, we'll say self dot follow button dot set title, and we'll set it to follow, set it to unfollow, sorry, and for state will be normal. Else we'll say self dot follow button dot set title follow, for state will be normal again. So basically what the data structure we create is, we'll have a following node, and inside that we'll have the user ID, and under that user ID we'll put in all the users that that particular user is following. So the currently logged in user, will check what if he is following this other user, then show the button as unfollow, else show the button as follow. Also now let's set the name of the user to display on the instead of the show user label. So let's just say self.name.text is equal to self.other user name as string. Okay, now before we try this out, we have to remember one thing, that here we're trying to pass the self.other users UID as string. Let's just go back to our home view controller. Correction, a follow users table view controller. Over here, if we see, we're getting all the users from our user profiles node and sorting them by name. What's happening is, if we have a look at our Firebase console, like I said here, from the user profiles, we only get the users data, we're not getting the users user ID. So we need to add that over here as well. So let's do that. What Firebase does is, it returns us the key of the data that we've asked for. So we can access that by saying let key equal to snapshot.key. This is the user ID, because in our Firebase database, our key will be the user's UID, which is stored here, followed by the data which we're getting back as the value. And then what we'll do is, we'll say let snapshot equal to snapshot.value as ns dictionary, what we've done inside the bracket over here. And before we put that inside, we'll say snapshot.set value, and we'll say key for UID, which will be UID. And over here, we'll replace this by just snapshot. Also, we'll do another check over here. We'll say if key is equal to self.loggedin user dot UID, That means if the user's UID is the same as the logged in user's ID, obviously we don't want to show that user in the find user tab. We'll just print a message saying here same as logged in user, so it will not be showed. Else we'll show the user and we'll add the user, which is by this line over here inside the table, and here it should be else. Now let's come back to the user's profile view controller, and here let's create the method to start following the user. So let's control drag from the follow button. Let's call this did tab follow. Connection will be of type action. Here what we'll do is we'll create a reference called set followers ref, and it will be the reference to our node in our database. So under followers it will go under self.other user, under the UID as string. Under that we'll say self.logged in user data UID as string, and similarly we'll have let following ref. This will be following followed by self.logged in user.data.uid. Get the UID of the logged in user, and inside that we'll put in the user ID of the user that is being followed. Now what we'll do is we'll say if self.follow button dot title label dot text is equal to follow, that is when it was tapped it showed it was follow, then we want to follow the user. So we'll say let followers data equal to, we'll do a multi-path update, so it will be name, to update the name, so it will be self.logged in user data and get the name, and we have to make sure that it's a string. Similarly we'll get handle self.logged in user data handle as string. Next will be profile pic, it will be self.logged in user data profile pic. Since the profile pic can also be empty, instead of downcasting it as a string, we'll just put it inside a string like this. Similarly we'll set up the following data. So basically in the following data it will have the other user's name, the other user's handle, and the other user's profile pic. For followers data it will have the currently logged in user's profile data. You'll understand this more once we see it in action. Then we'll say let child updates equal to followers ref. Under that we'll put in the followers data, and inside following ref we'll put in the following data. Followers ref updates inside the followers node, following data updates inside the following node. Then we'll say database ref dot update child values, and we'll pass in the child updates. Here we should change follow to a capital F so that it matches exactly with this. Now if you want to show the number of users that the user is following, instead of getting all the data, counting the children and showing it, we can just create a node called following count and followers count inside the user's profile. So let's see how we'll do that. We'll just create a variable called let followers count of type int, and let following count also of type int. Here we'll say if self.other user followers count is equal, since we're trying to follow the other user, is equal to nil. Then what we'll do is we'll set the followers count equal to 1. That is, if the user had no followers initially, because that node doesn't exist, it will show as nil, and we'll set the value to 1. Else followers count is equal to self.other followers count. If it already has some users that are its followers, we'll say as int, and we'll add one user to it. Also, we'll check if self.loggedin user data, the user that's trying to follow other people, if its following count is equal to nil, then set the following count equal to 1. Else following count will equal to self.loggedin user data following count as int plus 1. Now let's just update this in the database. So we'll say database ref dot child under user profiles dot child under self dot logged in user data uid as string dot child following count dot set value, and we'll just say following count. And for the other one, we'll just say database ref dot child go under users profile self dot other user and add its followers count. Now if the user clicked the unfollow button, the user is already following the user, then what we have to do is, I've just copied the code here, I'll just explain it to you. First we need to reduce the following count. Like we'd increase the following count over here, we need to just subtract the following count by 1. Similarly, followers count also needs to be reduced by 1. Similarly, we need to get the followers ref and following ref. We could have just declared this outside so that it was accessible everywhere. But for now, we'll just copy this, paste this in here. We'll get a reference to that. And what we'll do is we'll set their values to null, which is let child updates equal to following ref, set that to null by using ns null, and follower ref also to ns null. Now just say database ref dot update child values and pass in child updates. Now let's just try this out. Here we have the simulator in front of us. Here we have our database. So let's try and follow John Doe. We clicked on follow. Followers tab was created, which had John Doe's user ID followed by the user that is following him. Secondly, in the following tab, we have the currently signed in user ID and the people that person is following. Also, inside the profile ID, we have followers count under John Doe, and under our own logged in profile, we have following count. Also, some of you might have been confused by using this ns null over here. Basically, if we set a value to null in the Firebase database, it is automatically deleted. So now if we try and unfollow John Doe, you'll notice that the followers and following tabs are deleted. The followers count is now set to nil, correction 0, and following count is also set to 0. Now all we need to do is just display these followers and following count on the user's profile page. So coming here, let's just follow John Doe again and do the rest of the part. So instead of actually showing you a step-by-step video of these views, I'll just show you a created version and I'll walk you through it because it's not very difficult. If you see here, we've got the MeView controller, which is embedded in a navigation view controller now. And in the MeView controller, we replaced the 100 and 100 that was written here with following, followed by a button whose value is 0, and followers was followed by a button whose value is also 0. We've linked these buttons to views following is linked to the following view, and followers is linked to a followers view. Both are table view controllers. And then segues are also named accordingly: show followers table view controller and show following table views controller. Now if we come here to the me view controller, starting from the top, these two buttons are linked here as number following and numbers following and number followers, sorry. Coming down here in the view did load, along with the user's data that we're getting from under the user's profile followed by the logged in user ID, we're also getting the followers count and following count now, because these are created inside our user profiles node. We'll check if the followers count is not equal to nil. Only then should we set the button's value equal to followers count. That means this value will get updated to the followers count if they are not equal to nil, or it will remain 0. Similarly with following count, we'll check if it's not equal to nil, we'll set its value, otherwise we'll leave it at 0. Coming right here at the bottom, basically we just linked up the me view controller with the following and followers table view controllers. So if the segue identifier is equal to show following table view controller, it opens up the following table view controller and passes it the logged in user as a user variable. And if it is equal to the show followers table view controller, then it passes the user to the show followers table view controller. Coming here to the followers table view controller, it's a basic table view controller. We've created a variable on top called list followers. We've created an outlet for the table, and we've created a reference to the database over here. Also, the data of the user that is being passed from the previous view, that is a me view controller, is stored in the user variable. Coming in the view did load, what we do is we check the database for the followers tab, and we see if for this particular user ID there are any followers. Get the followers, append it to the list followers array, which is an array of NS dictionary like we've done before, and add it to the table view. Coming down here, we return section as 1, and we return the count of the followers as the number of rows. Similarly, we just set up the rows with the user's name, the handle, and return the cell. This is no different from setting up the find user table view controller, which has the same methods. Similarly, coming to the show following table view controller, we've created a variable called user, which gets the data from the me view controller of the logged in user along with the segue, created database ref, and we created a variable called list following. We check under the following tab here. If there are any people that the logged in user is following, we'll get the value, store it in the array, and add it to the table view. Similarly, set the section to 1 and set the roll number to the count of the array, and display the user's name and the user's handle. Now let's just test the app out. Go to the find user. Let's also follow the other user. So now we have 2 users that we're following. Come back to the me tab. Following gets updated to 2. Tap that. You can see that both the people that we're following are displayed over here. Similarly, if you go back and unfollow a user, the user is deleted, the count is also updated. Come back to the me view, following count is updated. If you view it, we only have one person that we're following left. Okay, I know this has taken a long time for this video to come up. I had it ready quite a long time back, but because I was really busy, I couldn't update this. I'm going to try and upload the other videos much quicker now. Till then, I hope you guys try this and let me know how it is. It is a little complicated to implement this in a NoSQL database as compared to a SQL database, but we'll dig deeper into this if required. Thanks for watching, guys, and please like and subscribe.